Welcome to Crowning Around, where every woman wears a crown, whether she's 17 or 70. I'm Joan Caliendo, and this is the space where magic happens when women empower women. Each week, we'll dig into topics like ageism, stepping into your power, and everything in between. And today, we're kicking it all off with a queen in her own right. Me, Ms. New York Senior America. Hi, everyone, and welcome to episode 4. Tonight, we are talking about the good, the bad, and the sparkly. But you'll notice that I'm here alone, but I'm really not, because tonight's guest is going to come through via Zoom, and we're going to have our first show where we feature someone that's not in the studio, but we are going to speak to her and discuss what is tonight's opening sparkle. So here's tonight's sparkle. Let's get real. What goes on behind the rhinestones in the workplace? And I have the perfect guest for that conversation this evening. I'd like to introduce to you Miss Camille Joseph Goldman. Hi, Camille.
Hello.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's great to have you. Logistically, this was the best we could do. Camille's been on the world tour, Italy, Martha's Vineyard, you name it. She's been out and about, and I'm thrilled that she could make it this evening via Zoom. And we're going to do our best to not have any glitches and progress beautifully through this conversation with Camille, the good, the bad, and the sparkly. So let me start by introducing my guest and some of her accolades. You're going to have to hold on for this because this is quite a list. She currently holds the position of Vice President of Charter Communications, predominantly government affairs for the entire Northeast region. She is a graduate of New York University. She served as New York City's youngest appointed Deputy Comptroller for Public Affairs. She was a deputy director for the National African American Vote during the Obama presidential campaign in 2012. She is director, or was director, of intergovernmental affairs to the office of U.S. Senator Kirsten Gillibrand. She was recognized as an honoree for the 40 Under 40 Award, sponsored by Crane's New York Business in 2023. And she is a wife and mother. Bobby, can you put up some of the family photos that show Camille at her finest moments? There she is at a young man by the name of Jonathan's wedding with her lovely husband, Jason, and her beautiful daughter, Miss Lily Ann. This is Camille's introductory headshot. And I believe we have one more. I believe this was a celebration of Jason's birthday. Yes. Camille, where was that?
Yeah, that was at Jason's, I think, 40th birthday party at Zero Pond.
Yeah, we have parties every year for Jason, so I wasn't sure what the number was. And then there's another beautiful image of Miss Lillian with mommy in her prized possession home. Would I be correct in saying that? Is that within your home?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I remember vividly. So welcome, Camille. We're going to start with our Queen's Court. And I think the question that we have to begin with, because your resume reads beautifully and has a lot of facets, but I think what viewers would like to hear from you is, what is it that you exactly do at the present?
That's a good question. And first and foremost, thank you so much for having me on.
My pleasure.
I think what you're trying to do is not just impactful, but timely. I think it's time for women to kind of share their voices in key and interesting ways. And I think you are fabulous at it. So thank you so much for the invitation. I, first and foremost, I'm a child of God. I am a lovely daughter, sister, mother, and wife. But I started my career as a public servant. I am now in the private sector, working for Charter Communications. Charter is a telecommunications company, a technology company that's nationwide. I oversee the Northeast for government affairs, but also serve as a national surrogate for the company on key issues. It keeps me busy. So it means that I oversee a team for as far north as Maine. So from Bangor, Maine to Harlem, New York, I have a team of vice presidents and directors and managers that are all focused on the company's mission. And that's kind of effective partnerships and efficient stakeholder engagement with key elected officials, from governors to state elected officials, attorney generals, to county leaders. And so it's multifaceted. And it's important that no matter what's going on in any key state, whether it's a key policy initiative or an idea that may impact our business, our company is usually at the forefront. And additionally, we can focus on ways in which we can make the communities we serve better. And so how can we partner with great community servants such as yourself, and build a robust network on the ground that helps the customers that we serve? And we have a workforce that lives in the very places in which we service our customers. And so all around the job connects through bridging the technology divide in key areas, whether it's an urban area like New York City or a rural area like Worcester, Massachusetts. We're on top of it. And I think the beauty of this job and my role is that I can go across the nation, serving as a voice for the company and its mission and thinking through technology needs across the board. And so as you mentioned before, I've spent some time traveling this summer, both for work and for pleasure. But when it came to the company's mission, thinking through how I'm speaking to key audiences and engaging on key impactful matters and thinking through the best ways in which my company can either be helpful or the community can provide instruction for us.
Okay, so you mentioned that you started out as a public servant and as a teacher. I feel that I did my 39 years of that as well. So now I'm asking you, is it better in the private sector? Do you feel that there's maybe a shift in how you can maintain your position where you're not serving the public good at all moments and for all means? Do you feel less pressure? Explain that to us.
I think that's a really good question. I will say that whether I'm in the public sector, the private sector, I try to think about how my core compass and how my morals and what I want to do, what I want, the light I hope to shine in the world, how that is directed. And so I think being a public servant, in some ways, alignment with my compass was in some ways easier, right? Because I got to kind of select the elected official I would work for. I worked for a slew of elected officials in New York State. But like anything else, I think the similarity, to get to your question, is whether you're working for an elected official or corporate entity, you're thinking about messaging and a mission that may not be exactly what you want or what you want to do, but in the end might be better for the communities in which you're trying to serve. And I think I've been very lucky that I've worked for public servants that understood that, but I also work with a company that understands that as well. I don't think I'd be best aligned with a company that I felt wasn't helping the community or wasn't helping individuals. And so, I often say that from a personal kind of mission perspective, my progression to the private sector is really an extension of my interests and what I wanted to do. And it wasn't as much of a divergence. And I will also say, and I don't know if this is good news or bad news for folks who are thinking about kind of next steps from the public sector and perhaps working private. I've always felt like I've worked very hard. I worked very hard as a public servant. I worked very, very hard as an executive at Charter. It's a different type of work for sure. Right. But there is in my role a significant degree of public-facing engagement that I still very much enjoy. And I will say, I think the biggest difference in my previous role, when I was deputy comptroller, I was managing a staff of hundreds. Here at Charter Communications, a smaller staff, a smaller team, I think. But I will say,
would you say more personalized?
Yeah, I think when I was in the comptroller's office, everyone was in the same building. Wow. All the staffers, whereas working here at Charter, I oversee folks I don't get to see in the flesh every single day. So it's a difference.
Okay. Best part of the job. What would you say that is?
The best part of the job is when we are able to not just when the company's benchmark of success is
Hmm.
also aligned with a community benchmark. So what do I mean by that? So, you know, a lot of what I do has to deal with connectivity, and thinking through resources and technology needs in areas in which either are currently served and we can make it even better, or perhaps like lack the service or the suite of services that I can offer. And I think that, the best part of the job is when someone is lacking a resource and lacking something, and you can literally bridge that divide. And we do that in a number of ways. We're getting ready. You mentioned your tenure as a teacher, and thank you again for your service. It's
Oh,
the
you're welcome. You're welcome.
jobs. Um, uh, but I will say that with back to school coming up, I'm working with the team, and we are going to give away kind of thousands of backpacks across the
Wonderful.
Northeast
Wonderful.
as school kids get ready to go back to school. But in addition to that, thinking about kind of what resources they can have, what is their access to the internet looking like? How can we kind of meet that child, but most specifically that family where they are, and thinking through their connectivity needs. When you're able to do that in real time and kind of
Right.
transform their experience and make it better for them, especially in a learning environment, I think it's incredibly rewarding.
Okay, I agree 100%. I love it. Now, how about the toughest part of the job? Now, you're a working mother, so, people want to understand how this resume that got you to where you are today enables you to still be a wife and mother and still maintain a healthy, well-balanced lifestyle. Because this is hectic. This is not, 9 to 5, pushing on, taking the train into the city and sitting at a desk and doing your due diligence daily. So can you explain to us what is the toughest part of your job?
I think that an ongoing challenge for working moms, but quite frankly, especially for women in the workplace, whether you're a mom, I think that most are caregivers or caretakers in some way, shape, or form.
Hmm.
Like I have women who perhaps are not married in the workplace or have children, but take care of their elderly parents, right? There is often a lot on our plates as women in the workforce. And I will say there are seasons in which I think that there is a balance. And I think there are seasons in which, because of my family support, my mom, for example, my mother-in-law, they really support my husband and I as we think through our professional goals and our trajectories and how we want to appear as parents and how we want this lived experience to be.
Right.
But I will say, what I've learned is that I will always, I'm Caribbean, I'm first generation American, and we talk about sometimes Caribbean guilt, if you will. I will always feel guilty
Hmm.
about kind of what I'm missing out on as a mother. There will never be a cure for that, but I will say that creating a balance and understanding my season. And so sometimes there's a season in which there's amazing balance, in which
Right.
I am able to be home in a way that satisfies all norms, and
Right.
I'm making breakfast and I'm doing drop off and I'm home and I'm doing pickup, and those seasons are lovely. And there are some seasons where I'm on the road for days and I'm talking to my daughter the way I'm talking to you via
Right.
Zoom.
Via Zoom. Yeah. Thank God for this.
Watching her meal and reading a book, and I make sure I have the same book she has at home. And like, the importance here in this narrative, the import here in this narrative is that I have to stay grounded around what matters most to me. And that's always going to be my family and my child and my husband, the life we're building together, and creating an environment in which I can create a lifestyle that is good for my child and good for our family and good for our dynamic, doing something I am passionate about for a company I like to work for,
Right.
um, while understanding that I need to always be cognizant of key goals at home. It's not, what I've learned is I've placed quality over quantity. I've
Hmm.
tried to be as present in every moment. So if I'm home, I try to be as present as possible. Um, and also creating standards with a team that understands the flexibility that I kind of cherish, that is theirs as well. I have a lot of working moms on my team who will say, I have to be offline between 3 and 5 or 3 and 7 because I'm going to go do pickup and I'm going to do dinner and put my child to bed. But at 7 p.m., I'm back online. Can we do
Right.
a call at that time? Can we pick up on the email at that time? That's perfectly okay. I have folks on my team that we try to make sure that a Friday afternoon doesn't feel like a Monday morning. It's not the opportunity to kind of begin the work week or begin initiatives. It's really an opportunity to kind of close things out, to understand that most people normatively want to enjoy their time with their families on the weekend.
Yeah, great.
I really do think that, COVID and kind of the season that's behind us around that horrible pandemic taught us a lot of lessons about kind
Agree.
of where a woman is placed, in the workforce and where she is placed at home. And a lot of us, I think it served as a good example of us balancing it all, trying to be the
And
traditional.
resilience. Agree 100%, because we all had to learn how to be resilient, and not just mothers, fathers as well, because it was a new dynamic forced upon us. And I think, interestingly enough, our children managed it easier than my generation did, because all of this technology was not something we were brought up with, right? So the panic that I had this morning when I knew it was going to be a Zoom versus you sitting here is not because I haven't done this and because I did it all of COVID. This is how I taught. But it just, the interpersonal relationships and the feedback and the way in which we speak to each other and the eye contact is something that I pride myself on as an educator. And this has always felt, in the last few years, a little false to me. And I don't like hearing the feedback, and perhaps you're a little delayed and maybe you're not hearing me clearly. And I don't go for it, but so far so good, Camille. So far so good. And I have to say this, I don't think the Caribbeans have all the guilt in the world. I think the Italians have a very fair share of guilt. And I think the Jewish people have a very fair share of guilt. So Miss Lillian is going to get it from every end when she grows up and has her own family. So that's just an interesting thing. So let's move on to the second question, which is, so no, you've navigated through, various positions and in a quite young way, right? You were young in your 20s and now you're in your 30s, and you climbed the ladder as you shared in the beginning and as you wanted to, and you took your promotions, and then you took your transitions and you changed that fit your family, understood. So I guess the question is, what are some of the changes in your span of transition that you've noticed in a positive way for women?
One thing I can say and I benefited from, and this is as a child of a working mother, having a mother-in-law who worked as well,
Still working, girl.
Still working very hard.
Still working.
Diligent public servant.
Yeah.
I have noticed with most of my transitions that I've actually benefited very greatly from the women before me. I have. While at times I might be the only woman in a space, I am rarely now the first. And I think that's important. And I'm not saying that there's not still a lot of work to be done. And I'm not saying that it's not incumbent upon me and others to continue that mission and legacy. But I will say in the last few years, particularly in the field that I work in, there have been so many folks that have worked so hard to normalize the presence of women in key spaces,
Right.
and to create an expectation that the task at hand can be done not just well, but perhaps even better if a woman's at the helm.
We're here. We're here. I agree. So yes, I hear what you're saying.
I think I have
stood on people's shoulders, but now they opened the doors for you. So you stood on their shoulders and you learned, right, their craft or from them. And then as the time went by, more doors opened, and here you stand, right? And you're grateful for that, and you recognize it and you own it. And I would believe, because I know you, that it will be a turnkey for you for future generations, right? To normalize it even more so. Correct. Now, did you go to an all-girls school? Did you go to an all-girls school? Okay, here. I feel feel the same way. Okay, so here we are as leaders because we didn't compete with young men in a high school setting. I think it made us stronger. And I every time I speak to people that are successful like yourself, I say, "How was your education?" "Oh, I went to an all-girl school." Here, here. I get it. Natural leadership and fostering it and continuing to do so because it's natural. It's in us. It's in our DNA. It's ingrained. So I love that. I think we're going to take a commercial break right now. We'll come back with some more questions.
Ever felt stuck with a home that just doesn't feel right anymore? Whether it's that outdated kitchen or the bathroom that needs a refreshed look, Twice as Nice Construction has got you covered. Family owned for over 20 years. Twice as Nice Construction has been providing beautiful new construction and additions and stunning remodels like kitchens and bathrooms. We're not just experts, we offer unbeatable quality and prices to help make your dream come true. Ready to start building your dream home or to give your kitchen and bathroom that much needed makeover? Contact Twice as Nice today and make your dream a reality. Visit twiceasniceremodel.com today for quality you can see and service you can trust. Twice the value, twice the commitment, Twice as Nice.
Are you looking at me? Are you looking at me in this beautiful set at Paradise Studios? Yep, this is Studio A, Paradise Studios in Long Island, New York. Right now I'm getting ready to record an infomercial for a client. If you need a place to record an infomercial, a news program, a sports show, this set is the bomb. We're set up now for a 3-camera shot. We got the green screen going. We do have a full LED video wall. So there's a lot of options here. So if you need to get some content done, if you have a product you want to showcase, if you want to set up a little infomercial, we can put it all together for you. This is the place to do it. Let's get your product, your brand out there. This is the place. I can help you do that. I'm the man for the job. My name is Bobby Lucera from Paradise Studios. I invite you to give me a call. Let's talk about your project and let's make it happen.
Welcome back, everyone, and thank you for joining us again. I'm here with my guest, Camille Joseph Goldman, via Zoom. And here she is, and we're in the middle of a great conversation regarding the good, the bad, and the sparkly in the workplace. And we're up to our third question of the Queen's Court, which is a little bit of a deep question, and it comes in 3 parts, so I'll separate it for you. I would like to hear your views in the workplace regarding inclusivity. Be gentle on the next topic because it's ageism, gentle. And the last is empowerment. So we'll start with inclusivity in the workplace. What are your opinions, viewpoints, or, words of wisdom that you can share with our viewers?
I think that one of the best ways to respond to this question is sometimes through strictly a business lens. And so if you're in the private sector, there are a number of studies, national think tanks. The New York Times routinely runs an article that talks about how inclusivity, along with some other factors, drives better outcomes for the bottom line of businesses and C-suites. And so, I think sometimes these topics can be like super polarizing, and there can be the inflection of kind of some personal belief or preferences rather. But at the end of the day, strictly from a business perspective or lens, it's a proven fact that it's an element that actually helps a business's bottom line. So from that perspective, I think it's helpful. The other thing I'll say is that personally, I think that I quite frankly wouldn't be here if not for inclusive environments, right? Right. While I will note that there have been women before me who've definitely created normalized leadership in spaces that I aspire to be in, and I'm happy to be a part of. There is also the truth that sometimes I've been in places or I've been in situations where being a woman, also being a woman of color, was incredibly rare, right? Yes. And as someone who, from a very early started doing full-time jobs in New York State. And I can tell you the story about like my first internship opportunity freshman year. I will say that the more and more folks let me in, created either spaces for me at a table and or allowed me to bring my own table and chair. It proved not just beneficial for me, but for them as well. And so, would want folks to also think about how this element, and I know we'll talk about ageism and so on, but how these elements positively also impact your experience, even if you don't feel like you are necessarily in the position to directly benefit. I think it's beneficial for the work environment writ large, for those things to be kind of prioritized.
Yeah, well said. Well said. Amen. Now, how about ageism? Okay, so you're on one end of the spectrum and I'm on the other. And I've had guests on the show that are of my age group who have transitioned out of one career or a lifelong career, that they've created and pensions are had and Social Security is being accumulated, but they're not done. And there's a lot of pivoting. And I think way better than my mother's generation where that was a done deal, right? You're going to be a grandma now and that's your job and that's your role. And it's very important. I'm not minimizing it. But ageism can exist on both sides of the spectrum. You're too old for this position or you're not the right fit because your viewpoints are too archaic, or you're too young, limited experience, and we're really not willing to put in, the hard work to get you up to our quota. So what have you seen in the workplace? Are you still seeing people that are valued at a certain age or being devalued, or is it, strictly, a 30-year-old group of people that are moving and shaking the world, and that's what we have to come to terms with?
Another great question. You're fabulous at this podcast.
Well, thank you. It's my teaching training. That's what it is.
So I've seen both ends of the spectrum. I will say, not just my current job, but across the board. Sometimes on one hand, I think sometimes I've assumed responsibilities or positions that folks who had it previously perhaps were not my age, right? And I've definitely where, especially even still, where people are like, who is this kid?
Who is this kid? Right. Or who is this girl? Ooh, are we still saying that?
Yeah.
Yeah,
girl's a big one.
Yeah, I know.
But what I will say, right, to be fair, and to be, well, I think there's always better language and better kind of placement of the articulation of one's perception, right? I do think companies have done a really good job at kind of creating kind of trainings, even for me, like how to manage and or work with someone and insert the generation. So Gen Z. I will say up until recently, I was the youngest person on my team. Meaning everyone I managed was older than me. I have someone on my team currently that's been with the company for over 45 years.
Wow.
My current company and my previous jobs have always treasured, I think, the tenure and investment in a skill set. And I think honestly, the more, it's like drive time, the more that you have experience in an industry, I actually think you're treasured for that. And I know that's not the same in every sector. Right?
Yeah.
And I know that people have different experiences on the workforce, but whether I was at Charter and or when I was as a public servant, I mean, I had someone who, when I was deputy comptroller, there was someone on my team who was actually working against her pension. She was actually losing money by coming into work, but she loved what she was doing.
And she was still contributing, right?
She was, I would say it would be an understatement to call her an asset, right? Because here we are. I mean, my mother would say there's nothing new under the sun. And even with the political environment in New York City right now, there's advice and experiences that can lead to a better kind of thought partnership on how to remedy and or move forward and strategize. Like there's an anecdote in business communities around what happened with Enron. And, if you have a room or a presentation of a room where every single person is from the same demographic of the same age, whether it's old or young, if everything is the same, you're
Right.
going to lead to the same decisions.
Same
But when there
conclusions.
are differences, there are some
Right.
inflections. Someone's younger, someone's older. There's a man. There's like when you
Right.
have these different perspectives around the same table, you may still have similar outcomes. Don't get me wrong. But there's an enforcement of an acknowledgement of perception, pros and cons, and a discussion that is unique to that type of room. And I think when it comes to ageism, I do think as a society, we have to, again, bringing it back to being Caribbean, like, there's nothing more senior or more treasured than an elder in a family.
Right.
And when it comes to the workforce, I think we could learn a lot from having that type of temperament when it comes to I would say the more seasoned generation. And for
I like these words. Wisdom, veterans. These are all words that I use now, Camille, regularly. Okay. So there you go. I enjoyed your answer. So now the last one is empowerment, because this is really, the show is based on the premise that I entered this new transitional world of podcasting and Miss New York, Senior America. And I've said it before, some of the ladies stood up to deliver their philosophy, and it was, traditionally about rainbows and dancing at the beach and picking up shells and, kumbaya, everything's wonderful and nothing wrong with that. But when I stood up, my first words were empowered women, empower women, period. I went on and on, trust me, I did. But that was my statement about who I was and how I wanted to present. And I remember saying when I went backstage, they're not going to like me because I'm coming across too aggressive or too powerful. And we know as women, if we're too much, right, then we're branded difficult, right, or aggressive, or dare I say a word that rhymes with witch. Whereas we almost honor it in men. And I don't want to get on a sexist rant, but the empowerment that I'm asking the question to you is in the idea, how do you see yourself in this workplace that you're in, empowering other women? That's my question.
Let me answer it in a very unique way. When I was, I told you before, when I was in college, I had a lot of real life work experience. And one of my first, when I went to NYU, I know folks are kind of getting ready to go to college and it's the season of back to school, but I went to NYU as a freshman. During my orientation, I thought I was already behind because I didn't have an internship freshman year, which sounds, looking back,
yeah, you were okay. Yeah,
I'm slacking, right?
Yeah,
so
no.
I went to, at that time, the Clinton Foundation had just started their office in Harlem, and I went on my own to the Clinton Foundation with a resume, hoping that someone in that office would see it and perhaps give me a shot at an internship. At that time, the foundation, I don't think, offered internships to freshmen. As you can understand, I was far beyond the deadline, right? I mean, this was like August, and the internship was supposed to start in September. But I got to tell you, during that entire orientation at NYU, I went every single day to the office, hoping to bump into someone. While I was there, there was a group of the doormen were there, and the guards. And there were a lot of women who actually were served as guards and doormen. And every day I spoke to them, I pled my case, and they would help me be on the lookout. I spent the week there, didn't get to meet anyone. 2 weeks later, I was at home. I got a phone call from the head of the internship program at the Clinton Foundation. And she said to me that she really couldn't enter her building without one of the leading guards, who was a woman at the time, saying, you have to call this woman. She was here all week. And she's like, every single day I come to the office and these ladies downstairs will not let me go upstairs unless I confirm that I have spoken to you. And quite frankly, that's how I got my first internship. And I say that because I think that we often think, listen, I'm proud to serve as an executive here at Charter. I think through both hiring decisions and the construct of the team through the lens of who's the most qualified, understanding that a woman could be the most qualified, right? And not discounting that fact. But I want to just say that you don't have to be an executive at a company to kind of leverage your space to empower women. And if not for those ladies in that lobby, I don't know if I would have had the same path. They leveraged their position. They saw something in me and they utilized it to help me get my very first internship. That is women helping women. That's
That is
not like
women
some,
helping women. But my takeaway from that is tenacity. Tenacity. I like it. And I think that's, lead by example. Show the world that that's, you're not giving up. Resilience, tenacity. I love it. All right, we're getting to the closing of our show. Didn't that fly by? Isn't this a fun event?
it's
It just
true.
flew. All right, we got 2 more things to do.
Yes.
We have our tiara tip. This is what I like to leave the listeners and the viewers with. And this is you get 2 minutes to answer this. And I just want you to comment on it. My quote is, stay gracious, but never be silent. What's your takeaway of that?
Humility and standing up for yourself aren't disparate concepts. There's a way to create space to let your point be made and let your voice be heard, without a degree of hubris or to make folks uncomfortable. Like I'm very grateful and gracious in spaces I occupy, but folks are going to understand that I'm the one occupying it.
I believe
and
that.
They don't have separate ideas or themes.
I believe that. I believe that strongly. So here's our crowning moment question, which sometimes gets my guest in trouble. So think before you speak on this one. And I'm going to give you an option because I don't want anyone to be discouraged from the question or hurt. My crowning moment is, you may either give us in 1 minute a story of when you did stand up for yourself, or what is your greatest achievement to date?
A moment that I stood up for myself and my greatest achievement are somewhat tied. And I think that it harkens back to a question you asked previously about the balance between work and personal life. Sure. There are many people who would say that, if you're in your early 30s and you're just entering certain spaces in your life, that perhaps maybe motherhood can wait, right? I'm not saying motherhood is something that every woman has to pursue, but I do think that in personal and in workspaces, I spoke up for myself and created a space where I could become a mother, right? And I could pursue this family goal. And not to say that motherhood in and of itself is a crowning achievement. I don't believe that as a woman that has to be your goal, but I'm being honest, it was a goal of mine. Like I always dreamt of motherhood. I dreamt of, kind of a lot of things in life, but I did dream of family. I did dream of motherhood. So I think speaking up for myself, both with, and I don't mean even a work context, I mean with doctors, with just speaking up around my goals, my interests, my wants, and how I envisioned that for myself and the life I was trying to created one of the best moments of my life. And that was becoming a mother.
That's your palette. That's what you were destined to become. So I've thoroughly enjoyed our time together. I have to give a little tease for next week because I'm having another Goldman on the show, which will be our back to school edition. And boy, do we have the right lady for the back to school edition, because my guest on the 9th of September will be Mrs. Ann Goldman, who happens to be Camille's mother-in-law, who happens to be my sister, because Camille is my niece-in-law, married to my godson, Mr. Jason Goldman. So this is a family affair. And I saved that for the end because I wanted her to appear to be exactly as she presented, with no family connections to reference on. No nepotism here at all. So next time we meet, which will be in 2 Tuesdays, we're going to have Ann Goldman on the show. She begins her career as a registered nurse in Brooklyn, and then currently goes on to become the UFT vice president for non-DOE members. She is the founder, this I'm most proud of, the founder of the Federation of Nurses. She is a chairperson for the New York State United Teachers Healthcare Professional Council. She is a chair for the AFT Healthcare, and she is an executive board member on both the state and national level. She is my sister. She is my mentor. She is the shoulders that I stood upon to get to the position that I'm at. I could never have been a nurse. Never could I have been a nurse. But I will say, I think our parents did a beautiful job in creating public servants that did for the greater good throughout Brooklyn and the boroughs and now Long Island. So I want to once again thank my guest, my niece-in-law, Miss Camille Joseph Goldman. And I look forward to seeing everyone on the 9th when we host the back to school special. Dreaded, but not for me anymore. Retired. Can't wait to go to the beach on that day. So have a great Labor Day weekend, and thank you for viewing.